You ready?
Yep.
Hi, I'm Dean Hanson. I'm the chairman of the City of Laconia Conservation Commission. This is the Wednesday, July 7th, 2021 meeting, and we start the meeting off with a roll call. Letha?
Lisa Moran's here.
Mike Foot, here. I'm Dean Trefethen.
Stacy Susie.
Okay.
Dean,
And-
could I get you to move the microphone just a little closer to you
Me? Why is that?
so we can hear you?
Okay, we start out with a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. Okay, so we will start off by having, so we don't tie you up, Endicott Street. You're going to be first on the agenda.
I understand you have plans available, but I ended up bringing an easel just as an aid. Hopefully this helps.
They're on the tablet, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have them on our tablets. Thank you.
I think it's more for my benefit than for yours. We knew that you had tablets with all the plans. Good evening, Mr. Anson and members of the commission. My name is Tim Britton from Cleveland Waters and Bass down in Concord. We represent Jennings Excavation, Inc., and Dave Jennings, the president of that company, is here with us tonight. I am going to do as little talking as possible because the folks that really know the details here are Jason Hill and Chris Danforth from TF Moran, who will step up to the podium here in a moment. Mr. Jennings owns a certain parcel of land on Route 11B, Laconia, known as Endicott Estates. It is identified in the city tax map as map 164-72-1. It's approximately 21 plus acres in size, and Jennings Excavation purchased the property in January of this year. He would like to establish a cluster residential development on the site with 87 units, 68 clustered lots, including a combination of single-family detached and duplex structures. The property is located in the Shoreland Residential Zoning District and is subject to the overlay for wetlands conservation. I suspect that many of you have sat through prior applications with respect to this property. It has been the subject of two prior applications, both of which were approved by the planning board. The first was in 2008 for a 126 condominium multifamily development, and there was a lot of site work done in connection with that approval, making some of the changes you're going to hear about later tonight. There is a roughed-in road network. There's roughed-in utilities, drainage system, installation of pipes, and that project went in the tank basically when the economy went south in 2008 and laid fallow for several years. In 2016, Phoenix Capital brought a new project to the ZBA, this commission, and also to the planning board to establish an 87-unit project. And that project was approved by the planning board in 2017. And in connection with that approval, there were several conditional use permits granted with respect to the project, and that's why we are here tonight. Mr. Jennings wants to establish the exact same project that was approved in 2017. We are here to present the details regarding the same conditional use permits that were heard by this commission before and approved by the planning board in 2017. And we're seeking your recommendation to the planning board that they remain appropriate for the proposed project. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Jason and Chris from TF Moran. Thank you.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Jason Hill with TF Moran. And I recognize many of you as being part of this commission. I guess it's been a while. 2017. It seems like forever ago. But as Tim mentioned, we're here looking to basically restore what was originally approved by the planning board, which was for this development. Could you just set that up, Chris? I'm sorry, my easel leg broke at the worst moment. So, yeah, so this plan is the same plan building program that was approved by the boards and reviewed with your commission in 2017. It's an 87 unit, total unit cluster subdivision that consists of a mix of single family homes. It's and then as well as there's twin homes, they're called, which is like a larger scale duplex, and then there's duplex units of various architectural finish. So there's a mixture of single and duplex units scattered throughout the development, and obviously a generous amount of open space. Just to familiarize you all, is everyone familiar with the property and the current status of the property? Okay, so it's been significantly altered during the initial construction that Tim had mentioned. There was blasting, there was utilities installed, there was roads cut in this forming a loop road network, which is we're looking to utilize that same road network, which was roughed in with partial infrastructure to support this development, which is a reduced density development with more open space than was originally proposed. I think the density is roughly 30% less housing from what was originally planned for, from the 126 units to the now 87 units. So that's a 30% reduction, and that allows us to have less impervious coverage proposed, as well as more open space. But like I said, with the roads being constructed, generally many of the improvements being put in, it's really essential from an economic standpoint to utilize this arrangement. So there's three conditional use, well, there's more than three conditional use permits that we're asking for reapproval of, but really, I think three of which relate to your commission, which would be the one conditional use permit to work within the wetlands and wetlands buffer areas. There's a 50-foot, for jurisdictional wetlands, there's a 50-foot buffer. So we're proposing to impact that in certain areas, as well as to fill three or four man-made wetlands that were created in 2000, in or around 2009, 8, that was to stabilize this site, which, like I said, it was under construction. That project fell through the recession. The contractor had enough open area. They were required to stabilize the site for erosion controls. They excavated some ditches for stormwater controls. The site has a relatively high groundwater table. Therefore, those ditches, if they are not maintained, or even if with maintenance they would develop into a jurisdictional area, although it's recognized as a man-made wetland. And those areas are, they show here, it's bad color. It's this finger here, and then there's a finger right here, or like a crescent-shaped area. And that was a clubhouse. That was a clubhouse for the Shaker Heights development. That was, the foundation was excavated into the ground. And then here was that primary cutoff ditch that I was describing for stabilization that captured the runoff flowing across. So those are the man-made wetlands that were proposed, that we were proposed to fill, and we were approved for a wetlands permit subsequent to a ARM fund payment for mitigation purposes which was never paid. So the wetlands permit, it would have been valid still. We wouldn't be needing to re-permit that, but it was denied due to the payment not being received. But it was ready. It was met the minimum criteria for minimization, of impacts to and best design practices. So, secondly, there's some perimeter equivalent to what was proposed formally. There are some fringe areas where the wetland buffer area has been disturbed as a result of the original construction in 2000 and in the 2000s, where Laconia had a 30-foot buffer around wetlands and not a 50-foot buffer. So the former Shaker Heights project was permitted to encroach to within 30 feet of the wetlands. Disturbances occurred in some areas, and we're proposing some minimal, some of the development area associated with the individual lots. We're seeking to reutilize those areas to build for portions of the developed footprint. So that is shown, it's really in this area here, right on the back of this Oriole Drive it's called, and then a portion of the road right in front of that wetland. So that's one of the CUPs. The second one was for Vernal Pool buffer area. I don't know if you recall that. We had discussed, I'm sure you have, and Chris can talk to some of the technical things, so I'll stop talking shortly. So there was a vernal pool established at this point of the property. It's a wooded area with like a depression in it. It had indicators of a vernal pool, and such was qualified as a vernal pool. With that, the city of Laconia has a enlarged buffer protective zone of the vernal pool of 100 feet. Further enhanced, I think, by the 10-foot, Dean, is that further added into the additional 10-foot because it's in a cluster? I think we're dealing with a 110-foot buffer versus a 100-foot buffer. So that, and this was the same case in 2017, is nothing different now with regards to this proposal. That impacted several of the units around the vernal pool were within that 100-foot buffer area established by the ordinance. And those areas were largely developed today. There's a large loam pile that's probably 20 feet tall. So that was there within the buffer. There's a large pile of riprap from blasting and trench work that is within, that's basically, I didn't bring an aerial. You can see it clearly on an aerial map. It's right in here, probably a 20-foot, 30-foot pile of stone. And those would be removed, but we had proposed to just reestablish some of the units, the perimeters of those units within those zones. And then finally, there's a steep slopes CUP required for working within the 15 to 25% zone of natural, that's not man-made, but the natural slopes, which was approved. And that was primarily, there's a small stretch of slope terrain in this quadrant, this corner of the site. This is a high, kind of like a knoll. And so there's some slopes, steep slopes district in this area, which was proposed to be impacted with primarily just the road itself. And I attached our original materials to my application that were prepared by Attorney Wood for supporting arguments and support of the conditions with the specific criteria, which I won't get into, the bullet points, unless asked. We can discuss the criteria, but I have attached those as our arguments in support of how we're addressing the conditional use criteria for each of those ordinances. Finally, I just want to say that we appreciate the time to work with you, and it was a good process. The last time, it was a very collaborative and well-done process. So those are the CUPs, really where we're at in the big picture. I'm not sure, Dean may have let you know, but we need to renew the variance for the cluster development, which was approved obviously under the original proposal. They had a 2-year lapse. So there's a variance associated with the cluster development for just some of the road network itself around the perimeter of the site encroached into the 40-foot setback. And that was because the roads were originally constructed as a non-cluster development. So, you know, they were using the same road network, but with the cluster application, it pulls you into the zoning ordinance. Anyways, we're dealing with that in that process now. We filed the paperwork. We're meeting with the zoning board around the 21st. July 20, thank you. And have filed the paperwork today for the planning board application, which is for a site plan. And we'll be meeting with the planning board accordingly. So we appreciate your feedback, and again, looking for ultimately the support of this application. And I'll stop. And if there's anything you'd like to add, Chris, at this point, you can add it.
I guess maybe just one of the things that came up with the permitting for the wetlands was, of course, the Vernal Pool, which is located here. And what we were proposing was to preserve this natural forested area around the wetlands as a directional buffer, which the Army Corps has documented as an acceptable conservation measure for Vernal Pool. Basically, that was one of the things we had to work through.
And that's really related to, Chris, I think the fact that effectively the vernal pool is only functional as it relates to, like, the circular buffer is valid in certain circumstances, but if it's not a habitat.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically the travel path of any, species that utilize the vernal pool would probably follow the wetland itself and not venture out into the uplands, they're typically gonna follow this path, so.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Oh, let Chris finish first.
I thought he had, I'm sorry.
And I'm going to entertain any questions.
So I'm sorry, I forgot this gentleman's name.
Jason.
I'm sorry?
Jason?
I thought Jason in his presentation, though, indicated that he wanted to encroach upon some of that vernal pool area for development. So it's not going to stay the same as we had discussed before.
Well, it's
Well,
not.
I meant that the original proposal also had the same encroachment. We're not proposing to move anything that was originally proposed further or
Okay.
closer. So everything that you reviewed in 17 associated with that is still in play with no change.
Okay.
And it was encroaching at that point only in the fact that there was existing improvements that were done when they started to build Shaker Heights originally, the original town. Anyways, when they built the original development, they encroached into that vernal pool buffer at that point in time, and we're not proposing any further encroachment into that based upon what was originally permitted.
I think the other thing too is there's two stockpiles there that Jason had mentioned, the topsoil and then the rock, blast rock pile, which, will be removed.
Maybe you should also mention that, and we'll get, as a further improvement, this was discussed, I know, at the planning board level, and I believe at the conservation level with you during the process in 2017, is how we can maximize the value of this riparian. I don't know if it's technically riparian, but the wetlands, the actual natural wetlands in the center of the site. You can see there is a V-shaped area, and we had agreed to revegetate some of the areas that were impacted with wetland type, like grasses and shrubs. And so there's a plan. I have it here in black and white, but you can actually see it up in here. So this is proposed landscaping in the open space as well as around this area. That will, basically the intention is to create a larger buffer area than what exists today in those areas to grow the buffer outwards. And we're going to, as a part of the condominium, this was going to be a protected open space with conservation restrictions. Not a full conservation easement, but we'd like to, there was conservation restrictions over what could occur in that area. There was planned some trails, like a walking trail,
Yep.
that they would like to still have the ability to do, but there was a lot of limitations on cutting of any material, as well as other restrictions that would apply.
Yeah, no, so I went out there today just to kind of check the site and see, you know, if the wetlands have changed, and everything looks pretty much the same. I would say that it's quite a bit more overgrown than it was
Sure.
the first time, so revegetation may not be such an issue today as it was back then,
Well-
depending on what we impact and,
Depending on what's reseeded itself.
Right.
You could have some invasive species that are revegetating for
well,
you.
I haven't really actually, didn't see much
Okay.
in the way of invasives out there. There's a little bit of loose strife, but very little.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I don't have an institutional memory that can recall what we had actually recommended based on the presentation last time, several years ago. I see what's in front of me here, and I'm not thinking these are necessarily our recommendations. Maybe they incorporated some of them. So I don't know, I do have a memory of some of the things we discussed, and all we have is this 2017 document, and we don't have any plans or anything in front of us. So it makes it a little hard to, if they're looking for recommendations, and also the fact that they filed something today for the planning board, which we don't have in front of us.
Yeah.
And I trust that your staff will be comparing the records to be sure that nothing has changed, you know, so I've just kind of,
Yeah, so in meeting with the team earlier, a couple months ago, we have the open question of, the biggest open question, and I've discussed this with them, is the vernal pool buffer area.
yeah,
I mean, there are other buffer area impacts, but the major one is the vernal pool.
I remember that, yeah.
And as you know, within that 100-foot buffer is a number of things going on, but in the end result will be, there are 4 or 5 units of housing that are either mostly or completely within that buffer area. And, I had discussed with them, I don't know how the Conservation Commission, and I also don't know how the Planning Board is going to react to that today. Yes, it was approved 4 years ago, but people change, and this board hasn't changed much, but there's been a pretty significant changeover on the planning board. So different points of view, different perspectives, don't know exactly what's going to happen. So my suggestion was to come to you kind of as a preliminary. My anticipation is that they will have to come back to you again in their process of being, their approval process. They'll be going to TRC next week, but I think it would be difficult for us to recommend that they go to planning board in August. It's probably planning board in September, in which case there's an opportunity for some stuff to happen that then you guys get another shot at this.
Okay.
But I think it would be worth their while to hear, your initial thoughts about everything that's going on in that site, recognizing that, there are still a few unknowns there right now.
Well, I just have a recollection of when Deb Williams, who was still a member of this commission, and having some discussion at length about what plants, like the plantings, and we talked maybe about a path that was some signage, I believe that was the site, and so, I mean, there was a significant discussion about
Yep.
recommendations. I mean, I understand our position here.
Would we be able to recover those recommendations or those?
Yes, we
On
can.
file
Yep,
easily
yep, we
enough.
can find those for you, absolutely.
Yep.
So, I hear you, and,
Oh, I
and
understand.
we can do that, and, you know, where you want to see this go, I think is, you know, obviously, you know, up to the commission. But, I mean, that was my intention of getting it to you.
Thank you.
Perhaps a little premature, but I thought it would be better to, you know, get the ball rolling and for them to get your feedback, at least your initial feedback, earlier rather than later. That was my thought process.
Mr. Chair, if I'm thinking back on this, I think we also talked about making sure there was zero runoff from the site because of the topography of the site, and that was, we'd talked about that. I don't remember if you have any other recollections. I don't think we were, I don't remember if Mr. Christopher at the time, when he was a member of this commission, had talked about jostling the footprint of any of those buildings. I don't remember. But I don't remember, but correct me if I'm wrong, that we had, except for having the zero runoff from the site, I don't know that we had a huge issue with the perimeters of the site. It was all interior, if I'm right.
Yeah, I think that my recollection is a couple of things. One is that on the, and I don't know what the direction is, but as I look at that drawing, the upper right-hand side, isn't that an,
There's a
it
detention
slopes,
basin right there?
no, up, it slopes down toward the adjacent properties on the right-hand side. And there
Over
was
here?
a, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a issue as to whether water was, runoff was gonna wind up going, into those adjacent properties.
Jason?
I think that was one of the issues that we brought up, because, you know, we want, I think that the city ordinances are pretty clear that, you know, you have to keep all of your runoff on your property. You have to deal with it. And so that was one of the things that I recall. The other was this issue of the buffer around the vernal pool, that instead of having a 100-foot circle, it was following that
Right.
ecological.
That's what I was talking about, a
Right,
directional buffer.
right, yeah, and so, and I know that we talked about that, and I think we ultimately said, okay, you know, that's not the way we normally do things, but that doesn't mean it's not a good way to do it. It just means
Yeah,
we're
it's
not
actually-
accustomed to it.
It's a alternate method that the Army Corps has published. And
Right, right, I remember that you gave us a paper that,
Yep.
you know, documented, yeah. I guess so I'm looking at the 2017 document here. Does that mean you haven't changed anything from 2017? That's the same development plan?
That's correct.
Okay, so that, you know, because I didn't want to have, you have that development plan, and I'm looking at 2017 saying,
Yeah, no,
I
it's
don't
the
understand what
same
you're
thing.
talking about here. So, one of the issues that I see is, the wetland survey is 4 years old.
Right, and actually, the state allows us to use a wetland that's, or delineation that's up to 5 years old, so we still got a year on it. I went out, that's why I went out today to check and see if there was anything different, and based on what I saw, I don't believe has changed.
And you are the delineator of record.
Yeah, I was the one that originally
Okay.
delineated, so.
Okay, so I mean, you know, I think that, you know, under normal circumstances, we don't recommend doing wetland surveys and delineations in June and July, you know, but given this year,
Well, actually, and also, I did have the opportunity to study that vernal pool. I did document it back in 2017. So I did have the benefit of seeing it in its prime in April. And also, I think I had a couple of months, you know, over a period of time that I got to observe what was in there and document the indicator species that were present. You know, right now, it's bone dry, so.
it
The
is,
pool- oh,
even
yeah.
with all this rain?
Yeah.
Wow, okay, okay. Now, you said that the water table is close to the surface. What does that mean?
Well, this particular soil type, it's, I looked at the NRCS mapping, and they indicate that there's actually shallow to bedrock in some places out here, 24 inches. What happened was with these wetlands, these new wetlands, they over-excavated for subgrade for the roads, and they didn't backfill, and water table was right there, and made a really nice little wetland. So that was the extent of the man-made wetlands out here.
So are you gonna have basements in these buildings?
We haven't proposed any basements.
Okay, so,
There'll be foundation drains for that purpose, and I can speak into the microphone. Yeah, so the units through the middle here are all gonna be slab on grade, 2-story, I think, for the most part. These will actually be walkouts, because the ground, like you mentioned, it drops. And we actually designed like I said, you had mentioned, Dean, that the concern with runoff, and so we have designed, although this is not a topo plan, but it was a part of the set that was approved by the city, a swale to collect the runoff coming off the back that basically drains into a catch basin. So this is actually going downhill this way and this way. So there's a swale, a real shallow swale that ties into a closed drainage system that ties into this pond. So the runoff is not being run on to the adjacent properties. But to finish, yeah, so these would be walkout units with a basement walkout potential. And then we have the terrain that's uphill in this direction. These would be step up, so you could have a second level main floor, first level garage, second level main floor, third level bedroom, and therefore we can bury the foundation to make the grade change, so we're not creating significant retaining walls for some of these units. That's the basic grading scheme for the units themselves. And they would all have foundation drains, each of the units, no matter if it was a slab or a step-up foundation. So, and the drainage system itself, the closed drains for the storm drain network, which is basically catch basins and pipe, that would be tied into the storm drain. So the storm drain's low enough to accept, this additional which is typically done for units like this.
Draining where?
For groundwater.
No, draining into the wetland?
Yeah, it actually goes into this. It's all, there's actually 2 detention ponds.
I'm sorry, Mike, I didn't realize you had.
I actually didn't mention this. There's a small pond right here, a filtration pond that picks up the drainage for this front area. It's just a smaller, it's probably the size of this room. And then there's the main pond, which has already been constructed partially, but we're gonna have to enlarge it for the majority of the site runoff. And it's enlarged from what you currently see. We're digging out a little bit more because of the, just because the rules, since this was originally constructed in 2000s. The designs have changed, the criteria for rainfall rates and things like that, and treatment criteria, so it just needs to have more volume. But it's not gonna be considered a dam or anything like that, where you have an impoundment of a significant amount of water over a long period of time.
Can I ask a question? Do you, on these, and do these have garages underneath them? Are they, where do you park the cars when you go to your house?
Yeah, they actually all will have, I believe.
Will they have a drive-in garage underneath?
Yes, so they'll have a drive-in garage with, I didn't bring the architecture, but there is a drive-in garage for
Yeah,
each.
I'm just trying to figure out, so about 2 cars for each?
Yeah, and then the parking varies, but at a minimum, it would provide enough for one, at a minimum, outside parking stall.
One of the things I remember about this, when we're looking at that buffer at the top of the picture there, there was some discussion also about sheds and stuff like that, not putting them in because they were giving a variance because of work that was previously done on it to be able to utilize what had already been built. But some of the discussion ran to, no extra garages or sheds along in those buffers. It actually is a buffer.
You're saying in the
being-
perimeter cluster buffer,
Right.
prohibiting sheds, which would typically be allowed to like be within 10 feet or something of the property?
Right, and so there was some, I remember discussion on that for sure.
Would those be, Dean, do you know if those would already be precluded from, like, if you have a cluster and it has a 40-foot buffer?
They would be precluded from that, but I think that would be something that you'd, as a condition on the variance at ZBA level, that you'd want to, because Mike is also on the ZBA.
That's right, Mike, yep.
So probably why I have a remembrance to
Yeah,
that
I would think
conversation.
That would be something that,
All right.
if the variance is granted again, that the condition be that
Right,
there'd be no additional outbuildings or anything like that.
And that would only affect several buildings and not the general, it only affects a few perimeter structures.
Right. And I mean, that's something that if, given that condition of approval, we can, at the site plan level, we can work with the developer to include some of those restrictions into the homeowners / condo docs, so,
Yeah.
you know, the people who buy are aware that this is an issue.
Is this condominium development, or are these single-family houses?
So this is these will be condo units. So this is a cluster subdivision where the land will be owned by, the cluster unit will be, and the land and the unit will be owned by one entity. And the open space will be shared in common. So
Right.
your common areas will be the open space and the roads. We have the exclusive use, well, there is no exclusive use area, it's actually it's a cluster subdivision, so that's actually a piece of land that'll be, it's not subject to building setbacks, but that land will be sold to the owner, who will then outright own the land and the unit. And some of the units that are duplexes, then they would, I suppose, rent the duplex, or they could condo that unit, further condo it into two.
Under the cluster division thing, one of the options would be to create individual lots for each home. But they don't have to meet minimum lot sizes like a normal subdivision, where they could be much smaller, because you've got the perimeter and other areas that you know, would be common land. And under that scenario, you could have, if you had like a duplex, you could have the property line on the shared wall, and then they would have whatever land around the other three sides of the building
So
would
one
be
person
theirs.
could own the whole property.
Or that way, yes, yeah, you
They
could do it that way
actually
too.
Condo the unit, one of the units, and still retain
Yeah.
ownership of the land and their unit.
Yeah, either way, yeah.
I think, when Mr. Trefethan brought up the fact of homeowners association documentation, it did spark a memory that I think we also made some recommendations towards that for maintenance. So there may, I think our recommendations.
Yeah, I
come
think
up.
there were some recommendations about fertilizer use and those kinds of
And
things. and-
management, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, consistent with the shoreland
Yeah.
district, overlay district stuff, yeah, we
Well,
can
and
revisit those.
potentially invasive species too. I think we may have put something in
Yeah.
there about,
Yeah, we'll dig out the,
yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I was kind of just mentioning it so that, don't be surprised. I
Yeah.
think that's coming up.
So, I guess that, you know, I had my own environmental company, and I was on Long Island in New York. Long Island Sand and Gravel. Everybody, any developer would do soil borings. Up here, it is surprising to me that a developer doesn't do soil borings or test pits to find out where the bedrock is. And so there's a guy building a house across the street from me. And he's had, he's been breaking up bedrock for, he did it for like 6 weeks. Did you do any test pitch? Do any soil borings to see where the bedrock is? Like,
I know they have done some digging out there already, but not part of our process.
Other than for drainage, we did test pits for the ponds to ensure that the ponds are not in bedrock. And then I'm not aware of borings being done, but I know that, like Chris said, they started building the roads, and then they threw out a significant portion of I don't know if it's a majority of the road network, but a significant portion of the road network has been excavated, and they found water lines installed, which crisscross through the site. And they found the ledge, because there's a pile of it, that's 20 feet high next to the vernal pool. So, individual foundation work, when they sell the units to a builder, that may be the responsibility of that individual builder when they start building the units themselves. But we are aware of the general ledge profile based on where the roads have been constructed. And we have actually to handle any future blasting, if and when it does occur, which I'm not saying it's going to. There's probably going to be some hammering. But if blasting would need to occur, we have plans. We've called out on our site plans that were submitted to the city. There's a set of blasting best management practices that the state of New Hampshire has produced, and they recommend it's for reference purposes for blasters, in terms of minimization of the use of explosive materials, where to store explosives, how to conduct so that you are basically minimizing that process. So that is specified on our civil plans. There's a long list of practices that are part of the documents that are approved by the city that the contractor will have under within his building permit set, or his plans that they will follow if and when they encounter a significant amount of that.
so my concern is that you start blasting and you fracture the bedrock, which is what you're trying to do. You could wind up fracturing the rock to the extent that the water is drained from the site.
The groundwater?
Mm-hmm.
The groundwater is not in terms of the road itself is only going to be, well, it's roughed in most areas. You're only going down 2 feet where you're cutting it in, and then a lot of the site is in a fill. So we don't anticipate that to occur. And the blasting, if there was any, which is an unknown, if there would ever come to that point. And at that point in time, the blasting company would have to do several surveys, to ensure that they're not going to cause any significant disturbances to the groundwater. But
So I think if you're going to be blasting, it's going to be localized,
Sure.
maybe for a building foundation. It's not going to be the entire site.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm Dave Jennings. I'm the owner of the property. I'm also a general contractor that does excavation. I've been in this for my entire life. There may be some most of the roads are already at subgrade or very close to it. The rock that's there is what came out of the utility trenches, the existing pond that was built. We took this project over from another contractor, and we were involved in it until it went belly up, and that's how I ended up in this project. So the ledge, we can go out again and do more test pits, but there's ledge there, but you don't know where. And I mean, we can literally dig holes throughout the site and not hit it at the elevation that we need to get to, but 2 feet away, we're gonna hit it. And the rock work up here would probably primarily be done by hammer rather than blasting.
Okay.
We do 90% of it. The only time we'll blast is if it's really dense hard rock and we can't get it with a hydraulic hammer, then we'll blast, but 90% of it we get with hydraulic hammers these days. I think most of it will be related to just utility trenching on the site, because in general, the site has already been brought to grade, and the road infrastructure is pretty well at grade. But minor adjustments to bring it to the proposed grades here. That's why we're making no changes to the plans.
Okay.
From what was approved. But I'm certain that we'll hit some rock in some of the utilities, primarily because originally when this was done, it was designed at the 126 units. When they reduced it to the 87, all the utilities then changed to accommodate that 87. The trenches may still be reusable, and it'll be the same in the foundations. We may encounter some rock in the foundations, but every effort will be made to hammer it because we don't overblast and we don't over-excavate to do that.
Okay.
And the rock is then more usable because we're sizing it as we're taking it out.
Is there already utilities put into this? I'm just trying to remember the project.
There's
Did you
some-
already lay some stuff in here or
Some
no?
utilities, some of the drainage work is already done down in the pond and all that. The outlet drainage is already in place and intact. So that aspect of it, there won't be a lot of change in there, just expanding the pond. And I believe that's to the upside of it, so I believe that's out of the rock. And then some of the drainage going up the road is already in. Some of the sewer is laid, but that's gonna have to be redone because of the structure, the nature of you're servicing 87 units instead of the 126.
Yeah.
So most of that's gonna have to be redone.
Right.
And I don't know how much of the water I'll be able to reuse, just where it's been in there so long. It may be compromised, and if it's compromised, the pipe that's in the ground, we're gonna have to replace it.
And that is city water, municipal sewer.
Yes. Yep.
So,
Private pump station. It's gravity sewer down to the pump station of the private.
It's gravity down to here, and then it pumps up from here out.
All right, okay.
so you said that, okay, so let me see if I understand this. You're designing the project, you're getting the permits, and then you're gonna turn it over to individual builders to build each one of those buildings?
No, this is already designed, and it's already approved, and I'm just looking to reapprove it.
Right.
And then I'm gonna be involved in the builders, with a builder to build this out.
Okay, so it's
More than
not,
likely, I'll do all the earthwork.
yeah, so I'm not gonna come to you and say, I'll build my own house.
No.
Okay, good. That would be a disaster.
It may be done, I intend to do this in phases, but it won't be individuals.
So what do you think, can you describe the phases as you would?
I would hope to do, this is a phase, and then a section of this is a phase, and then another phase. So
Okay, so-
probably 3 phases.
Okay,
I don't think I'd get much more than that.
Okay.
I've got a builder that I do a lot of work for now. We're just finishing out a project in Candia for him, and he and I are talking about building this together.
okay.
Who is it?
Jerry Tangway?
Okay.
When we look at these phases, when we look at this project, as a condominium piece, is it a singular condominium piece, or are there condominium groups within the condominium piece?
This will be one.
All right,
So even though we build it out in phases,
Yeah.
it'll all be one association that handles all the roads and the maintenance and that type of stuff.
all right.
And who's gonna develop the condominium documents?
I will have to do it.
Okay. And Dave, right?
Yes, Dave.
Dave's gonna develop them, and then he'll give them to,
Yeah, we would review them.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, and they're gonna go
Okay.
down to the Attorney General and everything else. Yeah.
right, okay, okay. So this is like, this is what we did back in 2017, and we'd, wanna get an idea as to whether we would approve that or not. But you're gonna update the documents and then come back to us? Is that, do I understand that correctly?
We're looking to do whatever we need to do to move this forward. Basically looking to take the project that was designed. We were involved in this with the previous owner and looking at building this for them when they got it approved in 2017, but they couldn't get it funded to do it. So the project then sat there and went dormant, and ultimately, the only way I was gonna get my money out of it was to foreclose on it.
And because it had been over a year or two, then all the permits had lapsed,
Exactly,
which is why we're
here.
doing it again.
But I'm not looking to make any changes to the
Yep.
project. I'm looking to just reapprove what we currently had and move forward with the project and get it built out.
I
Okay,
mean,
so,
not to minimize all of the issues, but to me, the biggest issue and was the major point of discussion 4 years ago was the Vernal Pond. And if the commission is still agreeable to the concept of the directional buffer, given that when you go in the other direction, it's uphill and it's completely disturbed, and there's no natural anything there right now other than what's grown over the past several years. You know, if you're still agreeable to that, I think that's the kind of feedback that is important for tonight.
okay. So, Stacy? Sure?
So my question actually is closer to the Vernal Pond. I wasn't here in 2017, so I didn't get access to any of that, but is there any lighting going on
Oh, yeah.
for,
Oh, yeah.
like, so I'm more, is there permanent street lighting going on? Are they individual lights on the homes, or?
There is some street lighting here. I can't speak to exactly where it is. I'm not up to speed. Jason could probably answer that better.
There'll be minimal lighting. There's a lighting plan that I can provide that shows the specific locations, but there's some street lighting. No, this project actually, now that I'd have to revisit whether or not we actually remove the lighting. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Because that's what I'm wondering.
It still looks like there's something on the plan here.
Yeah, I believe typically we would have just minimal downcast lighting, like 1 or 2 lights that would focus on this road near the intersection. And then same with this road network, but they're not going to be spilling, and they're also lower than, there's a big grade change, so these are cut in. So it's up and then down, so there's like a natural, and it's wooded. There's trees, so they wouldn't expect any lighting that's pointed at the street away from the vernal pool. That would be backlighting, and it would have to go through a berm with vegetation. I wouldn't anticipate any significant light levels in the vernal pool area that would affect the vernal pool.
Okay, and I did read that there are going to be sidewalks all over it. Are those still in there?
There's a proposed sidewalk network around the development, yes. There was a waiver requested, which was denied, to omit a portion of the sidewalk, like this loop road section, for just the fact that there'll be limited traffic anticipated at this corner. This is really for fire purposes, this connection. So there's really not much traffic in this back corner. We proposed a sidewalk omission. It was denied by the planning board. So for those reasons, there'll be sidewalks at least on one side of the street for every road.
Okay.
Which will be good for the residents for walking.
Right.
And recreation, or passive, And then again, the discussion of a trail, which was of a trail network through this open space that's not within the wetlands, but within this buffer area with some signage that's basically some educational materials maybe that shows like this is this type of a plant species, it's a riparian plant, or this is a vernal pool. To some degree, we had discussed with the board about putting up some just minor signage, educational signage within that trail network, which we're still amenable to doing. It's like a little kiosk that you see at a trail.
Frogs and turtles.
Yeah, is it for
Dad
children?
came up with that.
Does that answer your question?
It does. I mean, I guess I would want less lighting, rather.
I can review the light levels, and I think that they're within the buffer area, and we can position the lighting if
Because
necessary.
people are going to have lights on their home,
Yeah, it's probably,
as it is.
I don't anticipate there being any foot candles in that zone, because the roads are not within the 100-foot buffer, with exception to there's no road within there's no infrastructure. None of the cluster roads are within the 100-foot buffer, and they're all, the lights are on the roads, and they're all pointed at the road.
Gotcha.
So the light would have to travel backwards 150 feet and like across this berm, so, you know, there was no there's no illumination of that buffer area from the road networks as proposed.
So you're going to, so they're going to TRC next, and
Yep.
then they're going to update these plans?
I anticipate that there will be a need to do that after TRC. And then, depending upon, you know, your recommendations, there may need to be further adjustments.
Okay, so I would request that if you're gonna make changes to the plan, you make them so that we can clearly see that this is a change from our submittal back in 2017. So that we don't have to read through and see that there were, anyway, and miss a change, so.
And I would say going forward at TRC, it'd be helpful for the team there to have, both teams, to have the recommendations
Yep.
from the last review of
Mm-hmm.
this.
I mean, they've also got to go to zoning board for, I think it's 3 variances.
I think it's only 2.
2, yeah, okay. Again, they're the same variances that were approved previously, and we have not changed our ordinance at all concerning this, but, you know, I can't make any guarantees about
Right,
what's
right,
going to happen.
we have new
here, so-
people, and so.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I just have a question, my curiosity. What is within the footprint of Chickadee Circle? It is kind of a bowling pin looking thing. I can't figure out what that is.
Here?
Chickadee Circle, upper left-hand corner of the property.
Yes.
I don't know what that is.
So that was a playground.
Oh, thank you, I'm
amenity.
sorry.
Yeah, it's not, totally, it's not clear, it's not called out.
Okay.
There was various amenities, a playground here. There's an amenities plan, which I didn't bring, but it identifies, like, there's a gazebo area with some other open space, you know, activity
Thank you.
amenities.
Yeah.
So I understand the concept of a buffer that is designed based on the natural features of the land, so that, you know, but how are you going to identify the edge of that buffer? Are you gonna do it based on, you know, we have these types of plants growing from here to here, and therefore that, you know, we're gonna give it a little bit more space, you know, we're gonna do a buffer to the buffer, and how are you gonna do
I
that?
think we were planning on, if I understand the question, we were gonna put up signage, protected area signage on the trees at 50-foot intervals or 100-foot intervals. I think there's a note actually on the plan. I think that's what we agreed with you folks last time on how we should protect these areas so that the residents know that they're restricted from going in there mowing, doing
Right, right,
whatever.
yeah, it's a
So we
mower.
were gonna put up at I think it was every 75 to 100 feet or something along 125. Just there may be a detail actually that shows the sign, because I don't think Laconia had a specific sign, but it was basically essentially a protected, you know, wetland buffer, do not, some of a protected area signage. We can refine what that looks like, but in general, is a notification, basically a notification and a delineation using just signage on. the
Right,
natural
I understand, you know, that's how you're gonna mark it, but what I'm saying is, how do you determine that it should be here versus out here? How are you gonna do that? You're gonna do it based on vegetation? You're gonna do a type
talking
of
about
habitat? How are you gonna do that?
Into like a directional buffer condition. I
But-
think what I was gonna do was, there's an open space, what we had planned on was using the actual open space area, that open space parcel in and of itself becomes that protected parcel amenity, because it's actually are gonna be a part of the condominium, this big tract in the center. And using the boundary of the boundary of the individual condo units, that's the line of demarcation. So that they will be marked with that type of signage along that edge of that common open space. Am I missing the question?
I'm not sure, frankly, I'm not sure.
So basically that whole parcel, which is an acre, so whatever the acreage is, will be established as a protected, restricted, conservation restrictions on that parcel. We're proposing vegetation around it, but we weren't proposing to use vegetation to define that.
I mean, from an ecological, what you're asking us to do is not to say, this is a vernal pool, it's got a 100-foot buffer around it in a circle. Instead, we want to use the natural flow of the vegetation, et cetera, as the defining buffer. And so I'm saying,
I think it's more terrain that is the
More-
defining feature.
okay, okay,
And I think when we get into the site plan review, the units that back up against the vernal pool area would probably have minimal backyards, maybe 20 feet, whereas some of the other units might have, much more, because they're not necessarily near the buffer at all, So, it's kind of look at each unit and how, where it is on the plan and what it's being affected by. That's my thought process on it.
I mean, what do you think, Chris?
I think our intent was to try to preserve the natural forest cover that's out there now as much as we can. I think there were some encroachments for some of these units into those areas. I can't really speak directly to that, but I think the intent was to preserve the existing,
Tree line.
naturally occurring tree line, vegetation line that exists today.
That's
That's
true.
our-
Okay,
That's true. Plus, the areas that we were enhancing with the proposed shrubbery, those are shown as tough to see on the scale plan, but you can see the dots here. So that's the proposed enhanced restoration areas, so to speak.
Okay.
In this area, as well as up here, adjacent to the pond, that are adjacent to that wetland complex. And so that forms the protected zone, and we then define the housing lots based on that, so that there's no encroachment of these restoration areas into the condo. It's all on its own parcel.
okay.
And that would be marked by, I think, we were planning on using signage as a field indicator. You'll see the plantings, but if you did not, if you were a layman who didn't realize that those were there for a specific reason, we would put either, if there was a shrub that couldn't, with no woody stem or whatever, we would put a grade stake, which was like if you go to St. Paul's in Concord, they do it. They have these conservation area signage up that either it's on a tree or on a grade stake if it's in a meadow, and so that would further define that district or that open space.
Okay, and the city does have those medallions, or,
Yes.
so I lived in a condominium development. Who's gonna police this thing? That's, that's a rhetorical question, you don't need to answer that. But who's gonna, oh, Lisa's got a bigger backyard than I do, I'm gonna cut some of mine down, so I have a big backyard too. So, anyway, I know that's not your responsibility, sorry.
Well, it might be this gentleman's responsibility if he's got the homeowners association
Well,
documents.
This is gonna fall back to the homeowners association to maintain this.
Right.
And protect that zone, and it's fairly easily delineated once it's laid out.
Right.
As to what is, where it needs to be, the line needs to be, and we can mark it, whether it's 50 feet, 75 feet. And I mean, we do it in fields now, where, you being a wide open field, it's, they have wetland delineation in there, where that can't be, you can't encroach upon.
Right,
And I believe one of the things, the recommendations from the original approval was that the Conservation Commission had the right, retained the right to do a spot check, is where my recollection of how we turned, that was I believe, an additional enforcement, protocol that was implemented, I think, to check on that, to ensure that was enforced, any enforcement was made. But these will all be, the roads are all private plowing, this will be private trash pickup, the only public stuff will be water, sewer, drainage will all be private, so there's not a lot of, not that this is more of a planning thing, but it's not gonna have a huge burden on any of that public infrastructure. There'll probably be some children here, but it's really, I could see marketed towards anyone, really, even vacation people who,
Oh,
Oh, boy.
oh, yes.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yes.
yeah, so I
Oh,
don't
boy.
There'll be some people that buy these units just for vacation home to come
Right.
up here for,
Right.
a month a year. I
Yeah.
mean, I intend to retain a few of the units myself.
Yeah.
For my own children to be up here and come up to enjoy it up here. But to your point about the Susie next door encroaching upon it, they're gonna own the property and they're gonna be accountable for it. And they can certainly be held liable for any encroachment they make into it. And the association would certainly maintain that aspect of the property. And if there's a violation, it comes back to the individual property owner.
Okay. Okay. So, anybody have any other questions?
Well, it's interesting seeing this project come up again, and I think I appreciate the continuity of the people who were previously developing it, so being careful that we move forward and pay attention to what we previously spoke about. I can't wait to see you again.
Okay, so do we need to, it would seem to me that the major issue is the buffer using instead of a 100-foot buffer around the vernal pool, it would be using this, the topography as the guiding factor here.
Yeah, so I don't think you need to take a vote tonight, but I think if you're, in the back of your mind right now, if you're saying, there's no way, Jose, I'm ever gonna vote for this, I think you should express that now. Otherwise, they're gonna go away, and I'm gonna go away with the impression that we're in
This is
pretty good shape.
acceptable. Right.
We're in pretty good shape, yeah.
So, Lisa, how do you feel about it?
Well, to Mr. Trefethan's question of, are you okay still with this directional buffer concept? Yes, I am.
Mike?
I wouldn't make it super standard practice, but recognizing what this project has been through since 2008 and having discussed it more than once, I feel comfortable in that it's a solution for this area.
Okay. And I feel the same way. So,
thank you for your input.
so, thank you for coming. My understanding is we'll see you again? Okay, you guys have to bring the popcorn next time.
That's easy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Dean.
Thank you.
I'm really the only person that's new to this project. All these people have
true.
lived it for years and years.
Well, then,
It's well needed.
Yeah. Yeah, housing is obviously in demand.
Okay.
We'll
Okay.
Get it finally done.
thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Okay, so let's go back to the agenda. We saluted the flag. Recording secretary.
That's Taylor.
Good. Welcome aboard.
I think I might have taken too many notes there, but.
Nah, you can never take too many notes.
This is the part where we get to say hi to Taylor and ask her where she comes from.
Right, that's right.
Hi, Taylor. Where do you come from?
I'm originally from Connecticut, but my family's been renting in Moultonborough for like 20 years. We just bought in 2017, so I'm living up there for right now.
So you're living in Moultonborough?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's, it's none of my business where you live, except when it gets to inclement weather, we like to err on the side of having you get home safely, so.
Okay, good to know. I appreciate that.
Okay, is there anything else you want to tell us about you?
Degree?
Degrees, yeah, I have a bachelor's from UNH in Environment and Resource Economics, and then I just finished my master's in Natural Resources. So mostly from the management perspective, I didn't really have like a lot of the ecology coursework and stuff like that, but that's kind of what I'm learning right now and all the erosion controls and things like that, so.
Good,
Real-time stuff.
good.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
So Mike, your
Yeah.
turn.
Huh?
Tell about yourself.
Yeah.
My name is Mike Foote. These people were nice enough some years ago when I walked in and was curious about what conservation did. They accepted me. And one of the things that this board has done over the years that I've been here, one of the ones that I'm most fond of is the Pickerel Pond conservation. And if you go out and look at that, that's something I hold dear to my heart, and I really thought it was good that this group was able to put it together. Other than that, I practice land management myself and forestry on 260 acres in the Weirs. And I serve my community here and on other boards. Is that good?
It's good. And aren't you a lifelong resident?
So far.
Well, that's all we're talking about. We're not talking about tomorrow.
No, I had to move away to get perspective. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a true appreciation for my community.
Lisa?
Hi. So, my name's Lisa Morin, and born and raised in Guilford and lived there for 45 years, and then moved a mile up the road in 2005, and it put me in Laconia. So I have a degree in environmental conservation with some business courses behind that, and graduated 20-plus years ago from UNH. So I know the curriculum's changed since then, but some of those basic courses. I also have a background in food service management, but that was earlier. In food service management and culinary arts. So I'm one of those people that have in their lifetime had changed careers. So I work for the Belknap County Conservation District. We're non-regulatory. We do mostly soil and water quality projects. Our big initiative right now is a large wood in streams. And we're doing a project in Samberton, which, and I'm on the Winnisquam Watershed Network as well as Mr. Anson. And because it affects Lake Winnisquam, that's why I'm mentioning it too. And I sit on way many boards than I probably should. So.
Stacy?
Stacy Susie, and I've been on the planning board for about a year, and they found out that I used to be the chair for conservation, so that made it an easy slide into liaison. And I'm on the master steering plan also, and the Lakes Region Planning Commission. And whatever else they throw at me, I just kind of say, okay.
One of the resources I'll recommend to you is the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions and Barbara Richter, if you haven't contacted her at all. I actually forwarded an email to her that you had joined,
Okay.
and she was looking forward to, oh, great, someone to meet. That's one of the too many boards I sit on, so
Yeah, great.
they're a
Thank you.
great resource.
I'm Dean Anson. I moved here full-time in '03 and have been coming here since '92. And I'm an environmental guy, I've been an environmental guy all my life, and I have a degree in zoology, and I have a master's in biology, and I have an MBA, and I'm on Lakes Region Planning Commission, Executive Committee and Winnisquam Watershed Network and Lisa's Board, Belknap County Conservation District, and anyway, so I'm glad you're here. We've been looking forward to you getting here because we have a lot of things, you know, there's this list on the agenda, but we have a lot of things that we're working on that we need help keeping them going and pushing them ahead. And I'm sure that Dean has shared Ashley's list with you? Yeah. Okay, good. So, so we need to, in particular, Mike talked about the Vernal Pond property that we purchased, I don't know, a couple of years ago, and it was, it became controversial. Really wasn't, but it's a nice piece of property. It gives, it will give the public access to Vernal Pond. So it's, anyway, so that's going to be fun to get it, as Mike said, to the point where we have a parking lot, we get a sign, and, you know, now people can start to go, and it'll probably be an opportunity for us to do some publicity, because it's what I've been told, but, you know, you can't believe fishermen, that the fishing in that is really good.
Was it,
So,
oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I was going to ask you, wasn't it in the NRI as a highly,
right.
the natural resources inventory is a highly
Right.
rated?
So we tried to get a lot of things off, and I think that in some respects we've bitten off more than we can chew, but, you know, that never stopped me, and it was like, okay. So let's just go back to the agenda here, and let's do the minutes from June 2nd. And philosophically, you know, we're supposed to meet the first and third Wednesdays of every month. However, everybody's really busy. So if we don't have any pressing issue, we typically don't meet that month, or that particular meeting. So it's, but I think we have enough on our plate right now, and the weather's good, so we should keep things moving.
One of the things that Deb Williams does is she's with New Hampshire Lake Coast, and for us here in Laconia, she's been point along with Mr. Anson as part of Winnisquam Watershed.
Dean, if you call me Mr. Anson, you are in trouble. I'm the other Dean, as a matter of fact, not just Dean.
But, so out of that is a lake monitoring system, really, for a city on the lakes. We have the Messer Street. We're always, recruiting and manning stuff like that's always a challenge. The other things we have done over the years is water testing, something we like to keep up on. Once again, volunteerism and recruiting and manning, and not to lose my track here. So water testing. We have the Lake Coast, and once a year in our conservation properties, we go out and monitor them. So on that, there may or may not be, over the past few years, some GPS points and stuff like that to make it easier. But in that, instead of just sending you straight out into the world, if you want someone to walk along with and show you some of these things, there are those of us here who have walked them before.
Okay, yeah, that's
And so utilize the people here as a resource for knowledge.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Okay, so, so, anybody get a chance to read the minutes from June 2nd?
I looked them over, nothing jumped out at me, but I have to admit, I didn't.
Did you get a chance to look at them, Mike?
No.
I didn't look at them either. In fact, I don't even know
Here, do you want-
how do I get to them?
It's all right,
Okay.
just use mine.
Oh, thanks, okay.
Probably page down a little to start the top of it.
Lisa Moran suggests the cemetery for pollinators.
Pollinator gardens. No, I'm not suggesting we bury them.
So maybe we should put the word gardens.
Okay.
Can you find them, Mike?
I'm looking.
So,
I mean, I just think that if we add the word gardens, it'll be okay.
And it looked like the porta potty was moved.
The porta potty at Messer Street was moved.
I've measured it.
You measured it? Oh, now,
With the aforementioned
it's
adjustments.
been a,
Yeah, when I measured it, it was 34 feet.
when it
From
was
where
in
it
the,
is-
when it was in the original location.
Yeah, when it was near the lake, yeah.
Yeah,
It has been
yeah,
moved
I know,
again.
I know.
Yeah, it's
I
over
know.
on the roadside, that's
Oh,
what I,
perfect. That
Yeah,
would
now
be-
it's across the road, now it's across the parking lot.
Oh, perfect, that's.
Yeah, so
Where
it's,
it was, it was
now it's
34.
134.
Yeah, it was 34 feet, it needs to be 30
Okay.
feet from the water.
All right, anybody want to make a motion on the minutes?
I'll move that we accept the minutes of Wednesday, June 2nd, 2021, with the correction under item 8, new business, to include the word pollinator gardens under Elmore, and suggest the cemetery or pollinator gardens as well. I think I completed that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, any more comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, good, thank you. Okay, so now we have, under old business, Lake Host. We do not have any Lake Host for the Messer Street ramp. So the Lake Host for Messer Street is funded by New Hampshire Lakes. We submit an application, they give us a grant of $1,200. And what we pay, I think we're talking about this year paying about $11 or $12 an hour. So if you know of anybody, we would like to have somebody about 18 years old, and we typically want them to be there on Saturday and Sunday. It's not a difficult job. Most people who are launching boats understand what the lake hosts do.
What are the hours on Saturday and Sunday?
So the hours are, we're very flexible because, but typically like 8 to 4. And we really need somebody who's mature to be there, like 18 and, because there can be some unsavory characters. So,
Hopheads with needles.
No.
what? Anyway, okay, so, if you could ask, Nancy Brown to put it in the Laconia links that we're looking for And I don't know, Dean, do you have a suggestion on where else we could advertise it so that,
We can do something.
okay, all right, good. Thank you, because, we typically start around the beginning of July and we go to around Labor Day. So it's a good opportunity for students. And we tried to get somebody from the Key Club, but nobody seemed to be particularly interested. And the requirements are that we have to have volunteer hours to help.
Match?
Yeah, match. And so sometimes I'll go down there on a weekend and, sit there and watch the people try to launch their boat or whatever. Is the first time you're launching your boat? Oh, yeah, okay.
I like the ones who want to put in at Messer Street. They put in a couple of jet skis. I was down there one day, and they wanted to know about Winnipesaukee. And the thing is, there's a dam on Opeechee between Opeechee and Winnipesaukee, and I told them it'd be difficult to get up the dam. And they might want to consider if they wanted to be on Winnipesaukee launching somewhere else. But it's difficult in the city because we don't have any public launching for the lakes. And the marinas really could care less about your $20 so you can get on the lake.
Okay, so that's the story on the lake host for Messer Street. Milfoil management, the city allocates monies every year to address milfoil. And they address milfoil in Paugus Bay, Opeechee, and Winnisquam. Winnisquam has 5 communities that front on the lake, and each one of those communities will allocate money to deal with the milfoil. And I think that this year in Winnisquam, I think we're only hand pulling milfoil. And Opeechee, I don't know what they're doing there, but anyway.
No, go ahead.
It's diver assisted.
Yeah, it's just, yeah.
I think it's diver assisted.
Because I just saw something written up about that.
And we have processed one invoice for Opeechee. They're gonna give us a series of invoices, and we just processed an invoice for Paugus Bay, because they did some work last week or the week before. And I know they got another go-around later, but, so we'll have not received an invoice or anything yet from Winnisquam, but.
Right, that they were there, I think it was Monday of this week. The people from Aqualogic were launching to go out and dive and document.
Okay.
Okay, so Pearly Pond. Pearly Pond, do you know where Pearly Pond is?
Is that the one on 106 coming down? Okay, then yes.
With a
Okay.
big tree.
That's, I don't think we have to do anything else there. We have planted some irises. We've delineated where we want Parks and Rec to cut the grass.
Did they mow them down?
And, yeah, I think that
They did.
I didn't know exactly what they were doing, but anyway, they mowed, and I think they might have cut down the irises, but I think that those are,
They went 2 feet beyond those markers.
I know.
into the-
yeah, I've already talked to Amy about
Okay, I
that.
figured you might have.
And I think, anyway, so we don't have to do anything else with regard to Pearly Pond right now. At some point, we're going to have to come up with some sort of a design for plantings, but right now, we're letting sleeping dogs lie. Okay, so water quality monitoring. Water quality monitoring, we do 2 types. We do tributaries, and Ashley and I were doing them on a monthly basis. And I think that so far, we've only missed June. We go out and we sample locations, send the samples down to DES, and, that's a really easy process. We use meters, mostly meters. We collect the data, we share it with the state, and they will prepare a report during the winter. So they'll summarize our findings.
One of them is a deep water site north of Big Island, and we coordinate with Waterworks to take us out in the whaler and do the sampling. Typically, it's a Wednesday for those guys.
And doesn't Ashley sort of calibrate things the day before or something? Wasn't that what she was doing?
I don't know if she was or not, I think.
Saw something about calibration in her notes.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah,
I think we have a how-to book.
right, we do have a how-to book, and it's very good. So we will sample, like Mike and Lisa have said, we're gonna sample the water in Paugus Bay. So we do a deep water sample, and we also do samples that are closer to shore. And we also do these tributaries. So
So how often do you do the deep water ones? Is
Once a month.
That's also monthly, okay.
but I don't know that we've done it, I don't think we've done it this year or last year because of COVID. And I don't know where,
Well, once, I think we
Thought
went,
so.
I think we went once last year,
okay,
late in the year, not late in the year, but late in the summer.
okay. So we,
I know it was limited.
so it's, we just have to coordinate with the water department. Rain gardens, we find places and build rain gardens. Typically, Lisa does it. She'll select the plants, and we'll go and
So, well, Deb Williams, being an educator with the schools, has done some with the schools on school property. And we, as the Conservation Commission, worked with the Key Club a few years ago to put one in behind the clubhouse at Tardif Park. There's one there. We like them, we promote them. If it's on that checklist, one of the things that we say to developers is, we may ask you about a rain garden or some sort of detention. I don't know that we've put in other rain gardens that I'm aware of.
not recently, but
Okay.
there are two that I was talking to Dean about before we started the meeting. One is at Gale Street, at the end of Gale Street, because the water goes right from the road, it goes straight into Winnisquam.
There used to be a wharf there back in the day.
Right. And all there is now is just concrete pad.
Before I forget, I did have an opportunity when I was, anyway, I went down to Bartlett Beach. And because I wanted to see the plans that Luke Powell had brought to us a year or so, I wanted to see that. And I couldn't discern from my memory of what I thought what I was expecting to see and what was on the landscape. And I'm just kind of wondering if those plans got implemented. There's silt fence still up that's kind of fallen apart now on the edge of the parking lot. And I just didn't, anyway, so I don't know if any of that stuff got implemented or what.
We'll check.
Okay, thanks.
Luke Powell was a longtime employee of the city. He's a wetland scientist, an engineer, and I think he is a soil scientist. He's a very nice guy.
I was gonna say, yes,
Very nice guy.
Yep.
Okay. So we don't have any plans for rain gardens right now. However, I think what we've done in the past is look for places that we could do it. And I don't think we need to. I think the more we can get you up to speed, then we can start looking for other opportunities too.
Okay, yeah, that sounds
get into trouble.
Somewhere, there should be a list, because we say it all the time, so I'm sure it exists within the box on your desk is, a list of recommended plantings that we use here, you know, so when the developers say, and it could even be right in, if I go back and look at all the developer stuff in there, it could even be listed in
the
there, I'm
reference
not sure
guides.
that it is. But certainly, there's, to answer that question, there should be a recommended list that we,
And there are 3 master gardeners. Lisa's a master gardener, Marnie is a master gardener, I'm a master gardener, so when it comes to plants, Lisa and Marnie are more familiar than I am, but I can dig a hole. So, anyway. Okay, so under new business, we already did Endicott. Well, does anybody have anything else under old business?
Is there anything we should be talking about on the applications you signed? There's quite a few
Okay,
here.
but that's under new business, so old business, we don't have anything else.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I got-
so new business, I mean, the applications are there, I think I did 4, and Deb did 1
Yeah.
last week. And the one, anyway, so the applications are there. So when an application comes in, it needs to be like a permit by notification. You can call me or send me an email, or have Kalina do it, and either Deb or I will come down and we'll review it so that we don't hold people's application up. But there's circumstances when we don't feel comfortable signing them, and then we'll bring it to the entire commission.
And that goes for the PBNs and the expedited ones? Okay.
Yes. And if it turns out that, anyway, so, okay. So the other thing that we need to, I'm gonna need people's help with is on the 23rd of July at 10:30. We've made a commitment to the Belknap Mill to do an environmental presentation for kids. And we agreed to do that with Terra Shore. Shore as in lake. And I think it is in the morning through, I think it's a morning activity. And we've done this before, and, you know, it's a way of helping, because they have like a kids' camp there at the Belknap Mill. And so, we just,
So what are you proposing? You're telling us about?
I don't know, it's, I'm a procrastinator, and it's only the 7th of July. I have like 16 days to come up with the answer to that question.
once again, all the stuff, you know, if you don't have a speech on hand, any of the coverage programs has a list of topics and preset speeches. They also have other things to help, like, you know, if you have a setup on your computer, you can step through it. They have pictures and
Okay,
topics, and that's
that's a good
available
idea.
to
Thanks.
people like us. And I would raise my hand and volunteer, but being as I pay tax and bill, the local community has seen fit that I have jury duty.
Oh, nice.
So I really don't know how that's going to work out. I just go either way.
Yeah, I think, I like that idea, Mike, about the coverts program, because I think they can speak to maybe wildlife, which
Yeah.
would be of interest to the kids.
And I've done coverts before. I did one of the coverts retreats back in the day, and I wasn't able to commit to their whole schedule and stuff, but there's certainly resources right there. And one of them's pollinators, the other one could be wetlands like beavers, and
Otter.
all our favorite
Yeah.
things that we like. Turtles and frogs.
What was that group called?
It's coverts program, that's UNH,
Oh, okay.
right out of UNH EDU.
COVERTS.
Yep.
Okay. So, other business. We have other business? Lisa?
I have something for you real quick. The ongoing saga of Wentworth Cove and that small right-of-way that people have, they call it their beach rights. It's like a 30-foot wide right-of-way that they all, there's like 50 homes that's their quote beach rights unquote. Anyway, it's an ongoing issue with
Oh, I know where that
who's
is now.
using it, and apparently they've reinstalled a dock, so there's another group of homeowners that don't want the dock are
Jeez.
hired a lawyer, and so it's strictly a civil matter amongst all themselves, but just to let you know that that's going on.
As long as they're civil, it's okay.
Yeah, well, I make no promises.
I can't even go there.
Okay. And then we have subcommittee reports, and I don't think we have any.
Well, the one that I often do is the agriculture, partly because of what we're involved in, but, and occasionally we bring up the state land that's gonna be for sale and how that may impact things. I don't really have anything to report on that right now, and I know Mr. Trefethan attends those meetings occasionally when they have them, so.
Do you know anything about the state school?
Oh, I know a lot about the state school, but there are no plans of, no definite plans, and, the conservation land is out of their purview.
The Ahern State Park.
Ahern is out of their purview, but the upland part of the state school property, there may or may not be some agricultural uses in their eventual plan, but we don't have anything definite yet.
What about the state forest that's across the street where the community
garden
gardens?
is.
Yeah, that is not under their purview.
That is not.
It is not.
Good,
Okay, good.
thank you. Yeah, we had a question of, but
Yeah, no,
Senator French, okay. Thank you.
strictly off limits.
Thank goodness.
Okay. Stacy?
There was an extension granted for a solar panel garden on city property on Endicott Street East. They're hoping to start it in spring of '22. Where exactly is that? I know, I couldn't find it. I went out and I looked.
Magnum Drive,
The old city dump,
the old city dump right in there.
whatever.
Could have just called you and asked.
Next to Sterling Drive.
I drove up and down going, where could it be?
Oh, because there's no culvert there, so you can't
Yeah,
go
you
out.
can't-
There's
You
no.
can't get there from here.
Perfect.
So that got granted.
Okay.
So that's just an extension that they got, that was granted.
Because it ran out, but the extension got approved.
Okay.
So one of the things I didn't know about solar arrays is that apparently they are a high incidence of soil erosion once they've been installed. I didn't realize that, and I don't know much more about that. Yeah, I don't know much more about that.
Because of the way it sheets off the panels.
It could be. I need to find out more, but I'm just throwing it out there.
Interesting that you'd have to consider that.
Yeah,
They maintain that they're going to have minimal disturbance to the ground. They install a bunch of concrete pads, but they're mostly surface.
yeah, this
Okay.
came up, yeah, it came up with a discussion with NRCS people and engineers and whatever, so I'll find out more, but
Yeah, that'd be good to know.
I wonder how that one in Tilton is doing with all the mass amount.
Yeah, I don't know, I'll have to ask.
I haven't seen it. That would be outside of my town. I'd have to go somewhere.
Dean, one of the things I would like somebody to take a look at is 465 Layton Avenue North.
Okay.
That's the guy who got the permission from the adjacent landowner to put his driveway,
Oh, yeah, yep.
Yep.
and it's, they are literally right at the edge of the pond.
I think they were supposed to be 10 feet.
They're not 10 feet.
Okay, we'll go out and take a look at it.
And it's, and then on the opposite side, and I didn't write down the number, on the lake side of Layton Avenue North, they're doing a, I think they're building the, septic system, but they have all torn up, it's all soil, I didn't see any, erosion control,
Okay,
and it's a steep slope.
yeah. We'll go out. We gotta continue our tour. She's been out a couple times. She's been out once with me, she went out with Rob, and she's been out
Okay.
with Karen.
Okay,
So
good,
she's
good.
being exposed to, all our problem childs.
Okay. So,
And the good childs. We do have some of them.
that's it.
Can I bring up a subject to discuss with somebody who sits on the planning board?
Yes, sure.
I just, about the condos going in Lakeport and the soils and all that. I don't know if it's a good place to talk about this at all. I was just wondering about because when.
The hole?
When Dean brought up the thing about soil borings, and that might have been, it's triggered for me, that might have been a place where we would have discovered the depth of the soils and the need for retention walls on that. And I just, I'm familiar with the practice that they're going to employ, but not, I haven't done it, but I'm familiar sort of with, with the practice, but I was just wondering, going forward, because I know they're going to go for an appeal for the project and all
Yeah.
this other stuff, so I
I
don't
see
really,
where you're going, yeah.
I'm just kind of wondering.
I think my first thought is how much of a cost that is to ask developers to do that.
Yeah.
How much of an additional cost?
To do, I'm sorry.
Soil
To do
borings.
soil
I'm
boring.
moving beyond that particular project and speaking to your point about soil borings. I use that project as an example because there's so much sand, loam, yeah, and wondering if soil borings had been done, if
They would have
they
known.
they might have adjusted the footprint so they wouldn't have, anyway. It doesn't matter what would have been the outcome. It just comes to the question about soil borings.
That's a great point. Maybe one of those checklist items, can it be added to?
But as you say, cost, and I don't know.
Right, I don't know how much that costs.
So I think that's a question to Dean. Can we add to our list of requirements for builders that they do soil borings and/or test pits on a site?
We can.
But how much, once again, how much do you add for, and I'm not talking about the big developers, they got their monies, but how much does it add for someone building on their lots? Does it matter about the size of the project, the type of the building, the weight that goes in?
Well,
Be different than just a residential or something.
And the point that was made earlier about you do test pit here and you don't find anything and
Bang.
right
Just-
here is where the ledge is.
How-
How many do you do? How close do you do them together to really learn?
What-
I don't know. I think I mean, obviously, on the places where there's going to be septic, they do test pits and stuff to make sure that they can perk. And that, again, there's not gonna be ledge right where they wanna put the septic system.
What
but,
about ground penetrating radar? Would that be more cost effective and still give you some results that,
Possibly. I don't know, I don't know what the cost of that is, and I don't know what the availability of those units are. I don't know. I know they used a little bit of that up on the state school property when they were looking for
Buried
stuff.
materials, yeah.
Yeah, when they were looking for stuff, but, I mean, they also did some test borings and some test bits too, but they did some radar stuff, so, yeah, I don't know.
I think that if somebody's building a single-family house, to ask them to do test pits or soil borings, and I think that would be overkill. But on a project like the gardens, I don't think that that's overkill. A project like the one on Elm Street, that's not overkill. And I think from the standpoint, or on Scenic Road, that whole thing on Scenic Road, those guys came and they said, this is what we want to do. And when I asked them how much of that Scenic Road they owned, they said, oh, well, we own essentially, not all of it, but a lot of it. And what are you going to do? We don't know. We haven't decided. I mean, to not have a plan for whatever amount on those steep slopes is like, I think that's,
Yep.
I think we sell ourselves short as a city. And,
So you want that on the site plan checklist or the checklist for conservation?
well, soils is under our purview, but it probably,
I think it would be on site plan.
yeah.
Because, these guys are, we're gonna go do this and this and this, and we may have to break the rock. Okay, but, what is that gonna do to the groundwater?
Okay.
Especially since, they're, anyway.
We can,
And it's the kind of thing that, you have a lot of experience. You know when to say, you need to do this, and,
yeah,
it's a recommendation, but
okay, we can bring that up at the planning board level and see if they want to add it to the checklist.
okay. Anybody have anything else? That's all from the planning department? I mean, the planning board, that's it?
It was a very long night.
That's what? So when you go beyond like 8 o'clock, do you get paid overtime?
I think it was
Had to
almost
get paid
1
double.
a.m.
Jeez, Stacy.
No, that was what time I got up.
Oh, wow.
They give you no dose or coffee or what?
We had a break
Wow.
at 9:20.
You were there too? You're laughing? You were there? Oh, yeah. Wow.
Okay, anybody have anything else?
Nope.
So do we want to, Dean, do we want to have some sort of a date to do tributary sampling? I mean, you know what Taylor's working on, and so,
Yep, we can, yep.
Yep.
Probably sometime the week of the 19th through the 23rd, is that close enough for you?
sure,
For
that
right
would,
now?
that would work.
Figure it out. Make sure we have all the right instructions and everything, and then,
Yeah, the instructions are good.
yeah,
The meters are our challenge.
yeah, okay.
Sorry.
We'll do a test run with tap water and, just to see what happens.
And see what you
High
find, see if it's drinkable.
concentrations
Okay,
But, okay.
All right, and when we get a firmer date, we'll let you know, and then
Okay,
anybody wants to join or whatever.
right.
Okay.
Okay.
She's been instructed to keep her boots in her office or her car, so that,
You got a nice raincoat some days.
Nah, I don't think, there aren't any places where you'll really get wet doing tributary sampling.
you know, but
I will get wet for sure, but,
we got some sites that are
oh, well, that's different. You got your sights on something
muddy or
else.
dusty or whatever, or both.
Move we
Last few
adjourn?
days have
But-
been muddy.
Move we
Okay.
adjourn?
Okay,
Is that a motion?
Yeah.
Second?
okay, any discussion? What? Stacy? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, good. Okay.
So, Mike, I just have to tell, I'm sorry to say this. Every time I look over there, all I can think of is Zeus.